cases of COVID piled up at the long-term care facility.
This is why we've characterized these homes as tinderboxes.
With no warnings to the families. Trump's plan to get America back to business.
We're winning the war.
But are lives at risk with worries about a second wave of the virus? Boris Johnson out of hospital. But the British Prime Minister hasn't bounced back from COVID just yet, and doing Easter differently.
Amazing grace.
The holy streams for the flock.
Kira Whitehead spent her Easter Sunday outside the Heron residence looking for answers. She knows her 89-year-old father had COVID-19 and died here on Friday. But that's all the information she's been given.
I feel worse because I don't know if my dad was lying in feces or not. I don't know. I don't know anything. I haven't seen him.
Few have seen the inside of the residence where 31 seniors have died in less than a month. The major crimes unit of the Montreal Police Force is now investigating, as is Quebec's coroner.
We're collecting also documents that we're seizing, notably the stuff like work schedule, list of employees, different types of evidence.
Police say the investigation could take weeks or even months. Quebec's Premier François Legault has described it as a possible case of gross negligence, with reports of residents being left in beds of their own excrement. Despite those difficult conditions, social worker Mandy Novak felt she had to come to volunteer her help.
There's a smell in there, and it's a smell of the deceased and of wounds that need to be taken care of and were not taken care of for a long time.
The province has said at least 5 of the 31 deaths inside the home were linked to COVID-19. The number of Canadian long-term care homes that have been ravaged by the virus continues to rise. Hundreds of facilities across the country have been hit by outbreaks, with elderly populations being more susceptible to the virus.
This is why we've characterized these homes as tinderboxes.
Dr. Samir Sinha helped the federal government develop recently released national guidelines for long-term care facilities to protect them from outbreaks with a so-called iron ring. Procedures like preventing people from working in multiple homes and making sure both staff and residents wear masks.
When we are having a case appear in a home, that we're actually promptly not only testing and isolating those who look like they're symptomatic, but also recognizing that people could have been infected who are asymptomatic.
Dr. Sinha acknowledges having those guidelines in place a month ago could have saved lives, but he says having them in place now will save many others. Mike Lecoulteur, Global News, Ottawa.
This Easter will be much different than others.
In his Easter address, U.S. President Donald Trump promised America will soon get back to normal, despite COVID-19 infection and death rates still on the rise.
It's a plague on our country like nobody's ever seen. But we're winning the battle, we're winning the war.
This week, the president plans to meet with his new task force on reopening the economy with a targeted May 1st date. Already his own health experts are pushing back, saying they still don't have the right diagnostic tests to protect people.
This team of experts, all of government approach, they're focused at looking at the earliest possible time that we can get Americans back to work safely and to give Americans the confidence they need.
World health experts also urging caution.
We think it's going to be a virus that stalks the human race for quite a long time to come until we can all have a vaccine that will protect us.
The nation's top infectious disease expert now admits concerns about the economy led the U.S. to wait too long, mid-March, to order protective measures to stop the spread of the virus.
Obviously, if we had right from the very beginning shut everything down, it may have been a little bit different, but there was a lot of pushback about shutting things down back then.
As the virus keeps tens of millions of Americans out of work, food banks are stretched to their limits. People waited in their cars for 2 hours at this distribution site in Hawaii.
I've never seen anything like it, but I don't think America has ever seen anything like the COVID crisis that we're having right now. This is extraordinary.
Meanwhile, the Treasury Department says tens of millions of Americans will start receiving their coronavirus stimulus payments next week. Some hope on this Easter Sunday for millions suffering from this pandemic. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
There are more than 1.8 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 worldwide. and more than 113,000 people have died from COVID. Right now, the UK is being hit extremely hard, recording more than 700 new deaths of COVID-19 in a 24-hour time frame. That takes the total number of deaths there to over 10,000. But there is some hope in Spain. The rate of infection has fallen. Still, that country recorded 619 deaths in the last day.
I've today left hospital after a week in which the NHS has saved my life. No question.
The 55-year-old says his life was on the line with COVID-19, and the situation could have gone either way if it wasn't for frontline health workers. Johnson was rushed to intensive care on Monday and spent 3 nights in ICU receiving oxygen. The pontiff says the pandemic is testing our whole human family and that this is not a time for self-centeredness and division. Only a handful of people were inside the basilica to assist with a virtual service for worshippers to watch from home. It's in stark comparison to last year, when some 70,000 people filled St. Peter's Square for the service. Italy is one of the worst hit countries in the COVID-19 pandemic, and the religious community has not been spared from the devastation. According to the New York Times, at least 100 priests in Italy have died since the outbreak hit that country.
When we come out of this, and we will come out of this, we will all take pride in the sacrifices we've made to protect each other and to protect the country we love.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau thanked Canadians for doing their part to prevent the spread of COVID-19 by keeping up their physical distance this Easter. He also offered words of support for the healthcare workers on the front lines of the pandemic during a holiday weekend for so many cultures, including Passover, Tamil New Year, and the Sikh holiday Vaisakhi.
You'd never guess it was Easter Sunday, judging by the parking lot of this Winnipeg church.
Better is the thing that we can look at.
But there is a service happening inside.
I don't think anybody's seen an Easter like this before. But I think the church has learned to adapt and has adapted very well.
For the first time, Pastor Jerry Michalski is live streaming his Easter service to an empty building. Families around the city tuning in from home.
Kev's drinking his coffee. We're watching church on the big screen there.
Similar celebrations taking place around the country. A church in Saskatoon with its first ever virtual Easter choir. It took 70 hours to stitch together 40 videos of the people singing their parts. And this Toronto family is adapting their festivities to suit the times. A virtual Easter this year for an 82-year-old grandmother who hasn't missed an Easter Sunday Mass in her life.
I feel sad because I don't see nobody at the church.
We had our cousins kind of come through the back and just stand outside the door and just gave our Easter wishes to each other. And that was obviously different and hard.
Welcome to our venue.
In Calgary, one church going drive-in movie style for its service. Cars packing the parking lot, tuning into the radio.